Most people think change happens when you learn something new, but that's usually not what changes your life. You can read more books, watch more videos, listen to more advice. You can spend years trying to improve yourself and still feel trapped inside the same emotional patterns, the same reactions, the same confusion. Because information alone does not create transformation. Awareness does. And this is the part most people never truly understand. They think awareness is just noticing things, paying attention, being more mindful for a few moments during the day. But awareness is much deeper than that. Awareness is the moment you stop being controlled by something you could not previously see. Think about it carefully. You cannot change a pattern while you are inside the pattern. You cannot free yourself from a mental loop that still feels normal to you. And most people are living their entire lives from unconscious repetition without realizing it. They wake up with the same emotional state. They react to situations the same way. They expect disappointment before anything even happens. They repeat thoughts that were planted years ago and call it personality. Then they wonder why their life never fully changes. What you have to understand is that the mind repeats what feels familiar, even when the familiar is painful. That is why people stay attached to stress they say they want to escape. That is why someone can desire love while emotionally expecting rejection. That is why a person can want abundance while internally preparing for loss. The conscious mind says one thing. The deeper conditioning says another. And conditioning always speaks louder than temporary motivation. This is where awareness becomes the missing piece. Because awareness interrupts automatic behavior. It exposes hidden assumptions. It allows you to finally see the machinery behind your emotional life. Without awareness, you do not choose your reactions. You inherit them. You inherit them from past experiences, from emotional wounds, from repeated thoughts, from environments that shaped the way you see yourself. Then one day, those patterns feel so natural that you stop questioning them. You simply say, "This is who I am." But is it really who you are? Or is it who you learn to become? There is a difference, a very important difference. Most people have never truly observed their own mind. They only experience it. They become angry, anxious, insecure, discouraged, overwhelmed. But they never pause long enough to examine what is actually happening underneath the emotion. So the emotion keeps controlling them. Now stay with me here. The moment you become aware of a pattern, something changes immediately. The pattern may still exist, but your relationship to it changes. And that changes everything. Because unconscious patterns survive through identification. They survive when you believe they are you. The moment you observe them clearly, separation begins. You start realizing, this reaction is happening inside me, but it is not my identity. That realization creates space. And in that space, choice becomes possible. Before awareness, life feels automatic. After awareness, life becomes intentional. This is why two people can experience the same situation and respond completely differently. One reacts from unconscious programming. The other responds from awareness. One becomes consumed by emotion. The other notices the emotion without becoming trapped inside it. Awareness does not mean you never feel pain. It means pain no longer controls your entire identity. That distinction matters more than people realize. Many people spend years trying to force positive thinking while remaining deeply unaware of the emotional patterns running beneath the surface. So externally, they repeat affirmations. Internally, they still feel unsafe, unworthy, disconnected, afraid. And the mind cannot move toward a future the nervous system perceives as dangerous. This is why awareness comes before transformation, not after. You cannot heal what you refuse to notice. You cannot shift what remains unconscious. Think about how often people live on mental autopilot. Someone criticizes them once, and they carry the emotional weight for days. A small setback happens, and immediately the mind says, "Nothing ever works for me." An opportunity appears, but fear instantly creates hesitation. These reactions happen so quickly that most people never question them. they simply obey them. But awareness slows the process down. Awareness allows you to witness the thought before becoming the thought. That may sound simple, but it changes the entire structure of your inner world. Because once you can observe your mind, you stop being completely controlled by it. This is where many people begin to feel uncomfortable, because awareness reveals things the ego would rather avoid. It reveals how often you seek external validation, how often fear shapes your decisions, how often old emotional pain influences present behavior, how often you abandon yourself just to feel accepted. Most people avoid awareness because awareness removes illusion, and illusion can feel safer than truth. If someone has spent years believing they are powerless, awareness becomes disruptive. It challenges the entire identity they built around limitation. But the truth is that awareness is not attacking you. It is freeing you. You are not seeing these patterns because you are broken. You are seeing them because you are finally conscious enough to recognize them. That is progress. Real progress often feels uncomfortable at first, because seeing clearly changes the relationship you have with yourself. You begin noticing how much energy is spent fighting reality internally. You notice how often the mind lives in imagined futures. You notice how rarely people are actually present. Most human suffering is not created by this exact moment. It is created by resistance to the moment. The mind says, "This moment should be different. I should already be further ahead. My life should look different by now." And that resistance creates emotional tension. Awareness dissolves some of that tension because it brings you back to what is real instead of what the mind keeps projecting. Let that sink in. Awareness is not passive. It changes behavior naturally. When you truly become aware of a destructive pattern, continuing the pattern starts to feel unnatural. Not because someone forced you to stop, but because you finally see clearly what the pattern is doing to your life. A person who becomes deeply aware of constant self-criticism starts seeing how exhausting it is. A person who becomes aware of emotional avoidance starts seeing how it blocks connection. A person who becomes aware of fear-based thinking starts recognizing how many opportunities were abandoned before they even began. Awareness creates honesty, and honesty creates the possibility for real change. Not performative change, not temporary motivation. Real change. This is also why awareness requires presence. You cannot become aware while constantly distracted, and modern life trains people to avoid silence at all costs. Noise everywhere, constant stimulation, endless scrolling, continuous mental consumption. Because silence forces observation, and observation reveals what has been hidden. Many people say they want clarity, but what they really want is reassurance. Clarity often asks you to confront uncomfortable truths first. Maybe the exhaustion is not coming from life itself, but from resisting yourself every day. Maybe the anxiety is not only about the future, but about losing control. Maybe the emptiness is coming from disconnection from your own inner experience. Awareness begins exposing these deeper layers, not to punish you, to return you to yourself. The truth is, most people are searching outside themselves for a solution to something happening inside themselves. They want a different job, different relationship, different environment, different circumstances. And sometimes external change matters. But external change without internal awareness often recreates the same emotional experience in a different form. Because wherever you go, your conditioning follows you until you become conscious of it. This is why awareness changes relationships. It changes communication. It changes emotional reactions. It changes the way you experience time. When you are aware, you stop reacting to every passing thought as if it were absolute truth. You begin questioning the stories your mind repeats automatically. And many of those stories were never even yours to begin with. Some were inherited from childhood. Some were shaped by emotional pain. Some came from years of comparison and disappointment. But awareness allows you to examine them instead of blindly living through them. This is where personal power actually begins. Not when you control everything around you, but when you become conscious of what is happening within you. Most people try to master life before mastering awareness, and that creates struggle. Because if you are unaware of your inner state, you will continue creating from confusion without realizing it. You will say you want peace while feeding constant mental chaos. You will say you want confidence while repeating silent self-rejection. You will say you want a new life while emotionally identifying with the old one. Awareness exposes these contradictions gently but clearly. And once you see them, you cannot fully unsee them. That is the beginning of transformation, not perfection. Awareness does not mean you suddenly become calm all the time. It means you recover faster. You recognize patterns sooner. You stop believing every emotional storm is your identity. That changes the direction of your entire life over time. Small moments of awareness create large internal shifts. A pause before reacting. A moment of observation before self-judgment. A conscious breath before fear takes over. These moments look small externally. Internally, they change everything. Because every moment of awareness weakens unconscious repetition. And every time unconscious repetition weakens, freedom increases. This is why awareness is not just another self-help concept. It is the foundation beneath every real transformation. Without awareness, people repeat cycles endlessly while searching for answers outside themselves. With awareness, they begin seeing the cause beneath the effect. And once you can see clearly, you can finally choose differently. The truth is, your life is shaped less by isolated events and more by the state of consciousness you repeatedly live from. That is why awareness matters so much. It changes the source, not just the surface. So if you feel like something has been missing in your life, maybe it is not more effort. Maybe it is not more information. Maybe it is the ability to truly observe yourself without immediately escaping, judging, suppressing, or reacting. Because awareness is where unconscious living ends. And conscious living begins. You are not as trapped as you think. Many of the limits you feel are patterns that became familiar through repetition. Patterns can change. But first, they must be seen. And this is where everything starts to shift. Not when you force yourself to become someone else, but when you finally become aware of who you have been unconsciously becoming all along. If this way of thinking speaks to something deeper in you, subscribe to the channel and continue exploring these ideas with us. And watch the next video, because understanding your mind changes the way you experience your entire life.